Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining today's All Things FRAND webinar, which we have titled FRAND 101, the patent issue that could put the brakes on your growth. My name is Brian Scarpelli. I'm Senior Policy Counsel here at ACT, the App Association, and also am pleased to be joined by David Bain. He is a serial entrepreneur, investor, and president of TM Technologies. Just to confirm, can folks hear me out there? See the slides okay?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, shifting to our second slide here, before we jump right in, I'd just like to put out to you some outcomes that we've proposed for this webinar in order to understand how FRAND issues impact you and what you can do about them. We'd like to provide you with some background and context around these topics. And so we'll be covering some key terms, an overview of how technical standards are developed, how FRAND promises or obligations play into this system, the guarantees they provide innovators like you, and a brief overview of relevant regulators, laws, and jurisdictions as a resource. And yes, these slides will be posted on the All Things FRAND website and also will be available upon request. So, what do we mean when we talk about standards, in quotes? So, the standards we are talking about are foundational to the software and hardware that you use to innovate. Officially, they are technical specifications set on the basis of consensus among stakeholders who are members of a standard development organization, or commonly referred to as an SDO. Some prominent examples of these you can see in the slides. They include the Internet Engineering Task Force, IETF, the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, IEEE as it's called, and the European Telecommunications Standardization Institute, or ETSI. These are just a few examples of some prominent standard organizations, looking to give you an idea, but the technical standards that are developed in the wide diversity of standard development organizations around the globe facilitate the deployment of new technologies on the largest possible scale and create a level playing field for competition in product markets. So they do this by allowing for products and services to interoperate and provide a metric of quality. Sometimes that is based on a certification, other times not, and eases market entry for folks like you. So as we move to the next slide, very briefly, just wanted to provide some context and background about how a standard is developed. The standard development organizations I described in the previous slide almost universally provide a framework that guarantees openness, transparency, and fairness throughout the process. And within this framework, ideas for needed technical standards can be proposed and developed. It's the development portion where you can see patented solutions contributed here noted that is the most important thing for you to be aware of and for us to note here. It's during this period of the standard development process that a participant in the process may, and many times this often does occur, contribute patented technology. When this happens, standard development organizations very typically require two things from the patent owner. First, the owner of the patent must declare that their contribution has a patent in it so that everyone else is aware and can factor that into their considerations as they determine whether or not to develop a consensus to adopt that patented technology. And second, the patent owner obligates himself or herself to provide access to that patented technology on fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory terms. So you can see in the slides there's just a few examples, again, famous standards, if you want to call them that. Wi-Fi is an IEEE, which, by the way, we borrowed this high-level development flow from. You can see the credit in the bottom right side. Click on that link if you want more information. But IEEE 802.11 is the official name for the Wi-Fi family of standards. And another one we note here is what's called LTE, long-term evolution, that's developed through another standards organization called FRAND. So key terms here, which I just described a little bit there: fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory. That is the FRAND acronym. And another key term here is Standards Essential Patent, or SEP, as I'll refer to it. So these are patents which are included in the standard, contributed, where you can see they are in the process, and are so integral to the standard that the standard cannot be implemented without utilizing the patent. When a standard and a patent within it are linked this closely, they're said to be essential to the standard. So they're called standard essential patents. So it is with this FRAND promise that we are, or obligation, that we are primarily concerned at All Things FRAND. The FRAND obligation is a forward-facing and open promise by a patent owner who has successfully gotten their patent incorporated into a industry standard to provide reasonable access to the standard essential patent in order to ensure that the standard essential patent owner does not abuse the leverage that they have on, and we'll discuss about why you can call these the beachfront property of patents in a moment. Without the FRAND, as technology has advanced, it has become increasingly essential to enable access to new customers and markets through technical interoperability. And without the FRAND obligation, an SEP owner would be able to simply exclude any new innovators they see as a threat from using the industry standard effectively through blocking access to their patent. And they could do this at their leisure. So it is pretty much universally accepted that FRAND behavior ensures access, fairness, and clarity. A relatable example often used to provide context on this issue is the smartphone itself. Some estimates have suggested that approximately 250,000 patents are relevant to the modern smartphone. These patents within standards underlie each and every functionality within the device. So access to them, as you can imagine, is critical for implementers. You can see some statistics here and a link at the bottom with a credit and a link to the actual report and analysis. But very interesting study issued recently explored this and provides some very helpful insight on these issues. For example, presuming that a phone costs $400, some pretty interesting effects emerge. For example, while a LTE chip, as standard we referenced earlier, or you could call a 4G chip, costs $13, it can face up to $60 per chip in royalties paid on the standard essential patents immersed within its technology. So the example we just zeroed in on, the LTE chip within a smartphone, illustrates a dilemma that, as you will see shortly, is of intense concern not only to innovators but to regulators and even courts. When an industry standard such as Wi-Fi or LTE, which are great examples we all are aware of, become globally adopted and perhaps even ubiquitous, the owners of the standard essential patents within those standards hold immense bargaining power. If you, as an innovator, are looking to break into a new market with the product, you must implement one or more software or hardware standards and, naturally, its included standard essential patents. You will likely find yourself negotiating a licensing fee with one of these standard essential patent owners. What if the patent owner demands an exorbitant royalty from you, similar to the case of an LTE chip discussed earlier, or perhaps engages in royalty stacking, as it's called, where the cumulative demands of patent holders across the relevant technology or the device threaten to make it economically unviable to offer the product? This underlines why the FRAND obligation made during the development of the standard, which we covered, is so important to you. So, unfortunately, we are experiencing a trend where some standard essential patent owners are flagrantly disregarding their FRAND promises. This threatens your ability to grow as a business. A notable collection of standard essential patent owners that increasingly rely on patent licensing fees for the majority of their revenue, in some cases, dispute the meaning of the FRAND obligation. This can take many forms. An SEP owner may just simply disregard the FRAND promise made on a particular patent because it was transferred to another party, sold. They may demand unfair cross-licensing arrangements that even include non-standard essential patents. And they may otherwise undertake unjust behavior, including gamesmanship, to hide the fact that they are simply unwilling to license their patent in order to block competitors from entering the market and competing with them through such means as seeking injunctions in federal district courts, or even going to the International Trade Commission in Washington, D.C. and attaining an exclusion order which would prevent you from shipping your products from outside of the United States inward across its borders. So, in a way, abuse of the FRAND obligation has become a new form of patent trolling. So now, there's a lot of content here just to provide you with a resource on what key governments, agencies, laws, and courts are involved in the FRAND debate today in some shape or form. Just briefly covering this for you. As you can see on slide 9, essentially every major marketplace around the globe has or is developing policies and laws in this space. This next slide, slide 10, again, is a reference to provide you with background on the key laws that many of these markets have in place that are influencing FRAND behavior or govern FRAND behavior. While the United States and European Union have the most long-standing activity in the area, the Far East, if you would call it that, China, Japan, South Korea, and most recently, in fact, the Republic of Korea, or South Korea, has been quite active. And finally, just to provide you with a list of key judicial decisions with citations so that you can reference them moving forward or ask us questions about them. One notable case to flag for you, the Huawei ZTE decision in the European Court of Justice, which is noted here, has been traveling onward, or you might say downward, to the EU member states as they implement this new precedent. And this really leads us to our purpose. This is why we have created the All Things FRAND effort. The role of patents and standards bodies is critical to the future of the software and mobile computing ecosystems. And after more than 10 years of engaging on these issues in some shape or form, ACT, the App Association, has created the All Things FRAND website as a repository for academic articles, legal cases, agency guidance, and other authoritative and credible writings about standards and FRAND licensing. In this slide, you can see a link to the website, which we'll provide later as well. So as we note in slide 12, we have developed standard essential patent principles, which include proposals on what FRAND should mean. This is broken down by addressing several topics you can see listed on the slides. Very quickly to cover them: fair and reasonable to all, the idea that a holder of a standard essential patent is subject to a FRAND commitment, must license that SEP on FRAND terms to all companies, organizations, and individuals who implement or wish to implement the standard. The availability of injunctions and other exclusionary remedies, as I mentioned, the International Trade Commission being the primary one. Our principle is that these should not be sought by standard essential patent holders or allowed except in very limited circumstances. The implementer or licensee is always entitled to assert claims and defenses. Touching on an issue I referenced earlier, the idea that a FRAND promise extends if transferred or sold. If a FRAND encumbered standard essential patent is transferred, the commitment should follow that standard essential patent in that and all subsequent transfers. And further, no forced licensing. While some licensees may wish to get broader licenses, patent holders should not require implementers to take or grant licenses to a FRAND obligated standard essential patent that is invalid, unenforceable, not infringed, or a patent that's not even essential to the standard. Again, referenced earlier. And finally, royalties. We've developed some consensus views that a reasonable rate for a valid, infringed, and enforceable FRAND obligated standard essential patent should be based on a number of factors, including the value of the actual patented invention apart from its inclusion in the standard, and in this calculation, it should not be done in a vacuum that ignores the portion in which the standard essential patent is substantially practiced, or royalty rates from other standard essential practices are required to implement the standard. And please visit our website for more information or let us know there. So that covers the principles that we hold on the All Things FRAND site. Now I'm happy to turn it over to David Bain of TM Technologies to provide a peer's perspective.
Thank you very much, Brian. This is David Bain from TM Technologies. TM Technologies LLC is the startup that is the inventor and owner of the large growing body of IP surrounding a new technology called transpositional modulation. Transpositional modulation is a new fundamental form of modulation like amplitude or frequency or phase modulation that has the benefit of not just being a unique modulation, but one that is extremely spectrally efficient. We're at this stage in our development, we're not quoting specific spectral efficiency numbers, but I can tell you that we are of the strong opinion that in the future, spectral efficiency of devices will not be expressed as a percentage of Claude Shannon's famous Shannon's limit. Usually things are quoted at 90, 95, 98% of Shannon's limit. We think that in the future we're going to be talking about multiples of Shannon. So it'll be like Mach 2 or Mach 3. We'll say that this device can operate at 3 Shannons or 4 Shannons. So we have a very different perspective. Obviously, we're a small company, but we're also not a product-centric company. We're an R&D company that is patent-centric, and yet the lack of clarity imposes a cost, introduces a variable to our investment and risk calculations that would be better that if we didn't have to deal with. We don't know how our IP will be licensed in the future. We don't know what specific rules will apply to us. Our technology is not yet FRAND encumbered in any way, but we will have that conversation with the various standard SDOs in the near future. If we had more clarity, we obviously would be able to better present investment scenarios to our investors and do better business planning. What else can I address about being a patent-centric organization that is coming into this ecosystem? It obviously affects our exit scenario also. I think some of the things that we would advocate for include, from the patent provider's perspective, is the ability to have some sort of engineering meritocracy, so that we have the comfort coming to the table with our IP, so it's not held up or held back, and with the secure belief in the idea that we are our technology will be used if it has better engineering properties than competing technologies. We would not, for instance, want to present our solution and then only to find that for political reasons or for the reasons of preserving other sort of prior entrants in the royalty stack, to be preventing us from providing progress. What else can I answer, Brian?
No, I think that's very helpful. That's very helpful. I think we are reaching the end here, and I think we'll both be able to take some questions from folks on the webinar for sure. I appreciate that very much. If we
this to take a look at this from sort of 90,000 feet, it is not just the functioning of the innovation ecosystem, but it's the functioning of our entire legal system that makes this sort of work possible. It's what makes our economies perhaps potentially more efficient than other economic paradigms and other legal paradigms, that we can work out these details to provide the clarity and predictability that companies need, both large and small.
Absolutely. Great. So really, that takes us to the zenith here of our presentation. Why should you care? Well, we've been going through, I think, a lot of background for you, and it is a bit of a tale one has to tell to really illustrate the importance of the FRAND obligation and standard essential patents and how this really underlies everything, the role of the standards organization, for example. But the bottom line is that this is a growing issue of concern, and that is increasingly touching new potential market entrants, and therefore impacts your business. And while you might read some of the headlines about how one Fortune 500 company won a $1 billion verdict against another Fortune 500 company, I think as David was just describing to you, that is not the scope of entities that this debate is limited to by any means. So bad actors are out there today that threaten your ability to innovate, and their broken promises to license standard essential patents on fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory terms present damage to innovation, raise the cost of product development for implementers, put interoperability in jeopardy, threatening entire business models, and of course in the end, and this is why governments are involved primarily, increase the costs that hardware and software end users bear. And I say end users because not only consumers, but folks in the enterprise as well. So what can you do is the next question. Well, first, we hope that today's webinar helps you understand the interplay of standards, patents, the fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory promise, and all of these different aspects connection to your ability to grow as a business, and welcome your questions and engagement. Second, we ask that you get involved. We're seeking ACT members who we can list on the All Things FRAND site as sponsors. We hold monthly policy calls at the end of each month, last Thursday of every month at 2 p.m., where we provide timely updates on developments and develop consensus around new activities as an All Things FRAND initiative, whether those be filings with regulatory authorities, new blog posts, new events. And we, as we develop all of these, if you call them deliverables and from a high level, we really need your input. So finally, we urge you to think about your experiences and where your business is heading towards contributing a blog to the All Things FRAND site, as we're actively soliciting guest bloggers for the site. So we'd love to take any questions you might have. I've received a few by email, and can get things rolling with those, but does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? Okay, well, hey, I have I
can ask a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Sure. So as a small company that is looking at wading into these deep waters, what are the precedents or ways to get some parameters around how you decide what a royalty should be for instance, if I have a technology that is going to double the spectral efficiency of your device, whether it's a Wi-Fi device or a cellular phone, how do I make the argument that this should be a valuable thing and not weighed against, for instance, the other 250,000 patents that you mentioned? If it's a question of how much the paper weighs of all these patents, we're going to be just a de minimis amount. But is there a way, or is there any way of basing the value of being able to predict royalties based on some sort of objective performance of the contributing technology?
Well, that's a great question, and be lawyerly and say that it does depend, unfortunately, but there is not a hard and fast answer, but that is, I think, a benefit to someone who's in the scenario that you're describing in a way. So what I think is reflected in some of the principles that we've developed, particularly around royalties, is that a hard and fast apportionment approach to determining a royalty inevitably will be trying to make one size fit all, and is inadvisable. And somebody's always going to come out on the wrong end of that. So taking into consideration a wide range of factors, what the value of the patent is. I mean, getting a valuation of the patent as it might stand alone, but at the same time considering broader factors and how integral it is to the product are all important. So as far as a resource, what can you point to? You can point to guidance. Some guidance, limited guidance, which we continue to work with key regulators towards developing further, but guidance from regulators does exist. And in addition, one can look to some court decisions. And the good news, which that sounds infinitely complicated to go and track all that down by yourself, the good news is that the All Things FRAND website is built just to serve that purpose, to be able to give you a clearinghouse to go and find that information.
That's a really good start. Something occurred to me that maybe if there is consensus or interest among the participants in the All Things FRAND group, that could be maybe a useful approach to at least explore. There's a thing that startup entrepreneurs sometimes use to help figure out the question of which of the startup entrepreneurs gets which portion of equity of a new venture, because everyone knows that the probability of the success of a solo entrepreneur is smaller, but once you have 2 or 3 co-founders, the chance of sustained success grows. It declines after 3, but just for the co-founders, there happens to be a rubric. I can't remember for the life of me the website that it's on, but it's a simple framework that the co-founders walk themselves through. You answer 15 or so questions, and it makes a recommendation as to the valuation, the respective valuation of the different members. They ask questions like, for instance, are all the founders going to contribute equal amounts of cash or time? Can this venture exist without one or more of the? Is it not going to happen if one of the parties isn't going to participate? But the only reason I bring it up is because that sort of method might be something that could lend greater clarity if all of these legal decisions and so forth could be boiled down to the pertinent questions, it could make it somehow more accessible to folks without the Washington lawyerly experience that you bring, Brian.
Great. Well, I do have a few questions that I got on email just now. A few folks have reached out. And I think this is a good one because I don't believe it's a term that I've used, but it's a term I think we're all familiar with, patent holdup. So the note I got is, I've often heard the term patent holdup. What is its connection to the issues that All Things FRAND is concerned with? And to tie in that phrase that we're all familiar with, while patent holdup might be understood to be to apply more broadly than to the standard essential patents that we're talking about, in some people's minds it is kind of a term of art. It is essentially the unreasonable blocking of access to a patent from a willing licensee. And so for our purposes, patent holdup is referring to the problem that arises when a standard essential patent holder has made a commitment to license on FRAND terms and then seeks to use methods like locking in, standard lock-in and others to obtain unjustifiably high royalties than would have otherwise been possible before the patent was even included in the standard, for example. So in other words, we are talking about the same thing. Patent holdup is exactly what the FRAND commitment seeks to prevent and what our priority is at All Things FRAND.
And what's the difference between hold up and hold back? Because hold back is what is the other problem in the system, where you have a technology that the world needs, and it's not finding its way to market because the technology is held back for lack of sufficiently for agreeable terms.
Absolutely. There are. I think hold back would be a cause of hold up, I suppose, if you really wanted to think of it that way. But that is, it's an important aspect that you raise. In other words, refusal, just a flat refusal to license, because a decision is made by an organization that it's more advantageous to lock competitors out and prevent their access to the patent, and therefore the bigger the standard that it's included in. So that is something, again, that the FRAND obligation is intended to to prevent when it's followed through on.
Maybe we should have a glossary on the FRAND site with that.
Not a bad idea.
Has some definitions and links.
That's a good idea. I think we should explore that. We should have that now. I had someone ask this question. I think we have mentioned it previously, and I will provide a link shortly in the slides, but just a question basically saying, where can I find advocacy from All Things FRAND? So I think just look to our website. Again, I'll show a link shortly. The website includes a great amount of resources that you can utilize today, and that we are still growing. Things like the glossary are actually exactly why we engage with you guys, because these ideas are great. We have, but on the site today, we have key summaries of regulatory and judicial developments from around the world, our standard essential patent principles. We have a blog that we update very often, and we encourage you to consider writing on as well. And the URL is allthingsfrand1word.com. Again, I'll display that in a moment. But a good question to answer with reinforcing the resource. I suppose there is one more question, a little wonky, but worth answering, I think, because it's so timely. Someone, the person who has emailed this question, has noticed that we listed a few court cases from the United Kingdom in our judicial slides, on our key judicial cases. So the question is, what is the impact that the Brexit will have FRAND protections in the situation in that country and any others. So that I can give you a somewhat certain answer today. Very little, because the Brexit will take some time to take place and for the UK to actually leave the European Union. But once it does, it will be separated and freed from EU laws and regulations and judicial precedent that they would have to follow in those courts. So this creates the possibility of an inconsistent approach in the UK down the road, which, by the way, is I believe currently the world's sixth largest economy, to FRAND obligations. Could be a serious issue. Very good question. And in short, there's a lot to be determined. We can't know right now. In fact, they could reverse the Brexit, couldn't they? But if things move forward as they voted on, then it will have implications. That is certain. Well, just to confirm for everybody, I haven't received any more questions. I can give people just one more opportunity to ask any questions for a few moments here. Please speak up. Well, appreciate everybody's time today. Thanks again for attending this webinar. Please reach out to us with any questions or ways that we can be of help. And you can see right now I'm displaying on slide 18 the URL for the website and my contact information. Please reach out. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we have recorded this webinar, and we also will be distributing the slide deck, and so all this information, including this webinar, will be available soon on the All Things FRAND website. Thank you, everyone. That concludes today's webinar. Appreciate it very much.